We are talking Pandamonium, you see, because there's a killer panda. See what they did there? Anyway, this one is directed by Mj Dixon, who previously directed the movie Mask of Thorn, a movie that I reviewed on this channel just a few months ago. And here we have a kind of slasher movie where the central premise is we have a group of male chauvinistic, misogynist lawyers who are very kind of broadly defined as these like horrible people. And they are having a party after work, an after hours party in the office, because there is a promotion on the table, and one particular one kind of wants to try and get ahead and ultimately has a little bit of a party. They invite a group of strippers because for the female kind of entertainment, and there happens to be a couple of new members of staff who just happen to be in the building when it gets shut down. However, this party is gate-crashed by a masked killer in a sharp suit and a large panda mask who is intent on wiping out the inhabitants of this building. What will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So let's first of all discuss what works with Pandamonium. Performance-wise, I feel the best performances here were by two of the female members of cast, Aaran as our new member of staff, Ariel, and then Dani Thompson as the kind of lead stripper, if you like. And these, to me, gave the most grounded and kind of somewhat believable performances, despite the fact this movie has kind of a hyper-reality with it, which we'll come on to. But for me, those two performances you cared the most about those two characters out of anyone else, I would say. One thing on the subject of the strippers, I actually quite like the inclusion, because all of some of the male characters that were portrayed as these lawyers, I mean, they're all kind of, they're all kind of given to us as these horrible, despicable human beings that you can kind of see getting their comeuppance. But the strippers were really just the X factor, so to speak, because they weren't portrayed to be horrible people. So you weren't really sure, who, if any of them, may survive. However, there's a very obvious bit of foreshadowing at the beginning of the movie that kind of spoils that, to be honest. The killer itself, as unpractical as it may be to wear such a big mask, all it would take would be to turn it and you would completely not be able to see where you're going, does strike quite a stylistic and imposing image in a sharp suit with a deformed panda head. Looks kind of cool, despite the fact that, like I said, all it would take would be to someone to kind of turn the mask and you couldn't see where you were going. And there are a couple of inventive kills here. A low-budget movie, it's not going to be particularly high production value, but nonetheless, I think they do the best they can in having some, fairly kind of gory kills. And some of them are kind of played for comedic value. There's one character that gets his kind of penis chopped off and is just kind of so high on drugs, he doesn't really kind of feel the pain and things like that. The movie, as I've mentioned, is kind of a horror comedy, and there are some kind of funny lines here, but put a pin in that because we are going to come back to it. The killer itself pretty much only says puns, and you'll be reminded of Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie Batman and Robin, the amount of puns that this character says. It's a little bit OTT, I would say. And yeah, it's quite fun to have this kind of office environment. And I wondered if they would do a little bit more with the kind of the workplace environment and kind of like big business kind of metaphors and things. But it really wasn't. It was just a couple of kind of moments here where, people, how people are with other people. But it's not really anything that's expanded on in any great kind of detail. The movie itself, the director here, I feel, has tried to has some influences, certainly from, I would say, Edgar Wright, in regards to some of the way this movie is shot, and some of the sound effects and stuff like that. It almost feels like it's a kind of juvenile comedy, but really sort of with the juvenile put up to the max. I was kind of reminded of kind of the humour that you would see on the In-Betweeners, although that to me that makes doing a disservice to the In-Betweeners, which I think is actually quite a clever comedy, whilst this one just has a juvenile humour, but it doesn't have the sophistication to go with it, or the kind of the characterisation. So let's move on to maybe what didn't work. So the whole movie is a relatively low budget affair, and outside of the couple of actors that I mentioned, the acting here is pretty dire. Now everyone kind of feels like they're playing more cartoon characters. Now I feel this is by design to a certain degree, but it makes the film have a very juvenile feel. No one really seems like they're a real human being that would kind of talk like this. Everyone is very exaggerated into kind of a cartoonish style character. And it doesn't help. Some of the dialogue here is just dreadful. This isn't meant to be a serious movie by any stretch, but nonetheless, I think they need to dial down some of the kind of the more obvious puns. And like I've mentioned, they do very clumsy kind of foreshadowing in certain things, and very clumsy references to certain things that just don't make sense. For example, there's a line that says in the beginning of the movie when we're introduced to our main protagonist Ariel, who is this new girl. What a character kind of mentions, oh, you'll be the last girl standing. I thought, oh, come on. I mean, no one's actually going to say a line like that. You know, it just doesn't make any... how would you draw that into a conversation? It's just very, very clumsy kind of foreshadowing. And here, it just proves the writing here just needed to have a little bit of extra oomph in it to make it seem clever. Because although this movie thinks it's funny, it certainly isn't clever. So we have poor dialogue. We have, to be honest with you, quite poor acting for the majority of the cast here. The gore is, although I'd say it's relatively inventive, some of the kills, we don't really see a hell of a lot. And the film itself is relatively simple with no real kind of surprises. There is a kind of an attempt at a plot twist here, but I feel because the writing is fairly poor, it didn't come as any big surprise here. Overall, I would say this is an evolution for Mj Dixon as a filmmaker, because I felt The Mask of Thorn was a very poor film. And I haven't seen... He has done quite a few movies, actually. I don't think I've seen all of them, but this was certainly a step up from the Mask of Thorn to me. And it did look like it was maybe trying to style a little bit too much from the likes of kind of Edgar Wright here, and maybe, you know, he needs to kind of have his own voice a little bit rather than trying to ape what I feel is comes before it, like Edgar Wright and a lot of the kind of the British comedies, like I've mentioned. It wasn't somewhat an entertaining film, however. I kind of thought the killer was quite a fun killer, and like I said, I actually quite liked a couple of the kind of the female members of the cast here, all of whom were very sexy, but actually gave at least somewhat kind of human performances rather than the caricatures like the other cast did. Overall, it's somewhat mildly diverting, but I would say it's a slightly below average movie, so in that respect I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.